How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Tear Talk. So let's revisit Jake Haro. We know he was just sentenced to, well, you got the 25 to life. You got the other 6 years for the violation of probation. You got some time connected to the filing a false police report, if you will. I think it's a total of almost 32 years. We broke that down in another video. But now the question is going to be what his life is going to be like in prison. So I got some questions that were asked of me that I would like to answer. But first, let's check out this video. If you're not too aware of this case, Jake Haro is the one that actually stepped up and took ownership of the death of his son, Emmanuel Haro. Right now, his wife, Rebecca Haro, we're still waiting to find out what happens to her. We won't know that till January. But with that said, I think as we kind of watch this unfold, he had probably an idea to do something strategic. Go right to the judge. Don't leave anything in the hands of a jury of your own peers, and see if you can get leniency in the sentencing. I think they were hoping for 15 to life, but yesterday he got the max that they could give somebody for his charges. So this was didn't go in his favor. So even though you may see him crying, I believe the tears are not out of guilt, but rather his new life, where he's going to be until he's at least 64, if not more, possibly the rest of his life. All right, so let me show you this quick video.
25 years to life in prison. That's a sentence Cabazon man is given after he pleads guilty to murdering his 7-month-old son.
Baby Emmanuel Haro was reported missing in August. His body has never been found. The judge handing down the sentence to his father, Jake, this afternoon.
Let's go live to Fox 11. Gina Silva with more from Riverside tonight. Gina?
Well, Marla, Christine, this is a case that has shaken an entire community. Today, the courtroom was packed. It was standing room only, and people were actually turned away. Inside, 32-year-old Jake Haro learned his fate.
Accordingly, I will impose the indeterminate term of 25 years to life.
2 weeks after pleading guilty to killing his 7-month-old son, Emmanuel, Jake Haro has been sentenced to the maximum penalty under California law, 25 years to life in prison. His attorney argued for a lighter sentence, noting that Haro confessed to the murder, but the judge rejected that request.
While Mr. Haro did plead guilty at an early stage in the proceedings, this does not outweigh the significant and considerable aggravating factors that he has admitted to. It cannot be ignored that Mr. Haro was on probation for severely abusing one child when he decided to assault and kill another child.
Right before the judge handed out the sentence, Emmanuel's maternal grandmother had this to say.
He destroyed my whole family. He branded his children for life. He damaged all his children for life. He changed my daughter over. We don't know who she is.
Rebecca Haro, who first told reporters her baby had been kidnapped on August 14th, continues to insist she is innocent. Meanwhile, community members following the case say they're frustrated that Emmanuel's body still hasn't been found. Many believe the sentence wasn't harsh enough.
I wish he would have gotten the death penalty for the innocent baby that he took. That was his son.
He shouldn't have, he should just have life, with no parole.
Where's the baby? Now that he got sentenced, where's the baby? Just say it. Just where's the baby? He deserved better.
Haro received an additional 6 years and 4 months for related charges, and they will be served consecutively. Meanwhile, Rebecca Haro will be back in court on January 21st. I'll send it back to you in the studio.
And, she just asked, where's the baby? Any indication that he is going to give up those specifics?
The DA is not giving any information on that. Hopefully, one day, they'll find that baby. But as of now, we don't know.
And that's a big thing right now. Where is Emmanuel Haro? That's what a lot of people really want to know. Again, if you watch my last video, I think the news reporter is a bit off on her total amount of time. I have a determinate term of 7 years and 2 months. That's for the probation violation and the other charges, and then the 25 years to life. So it comes to around 32 years, but that's my math. That's what I thought I got from yesterday, and I'm pretty sure that's correct. All right, so I got some questions that were sent my way, so I would like to try to answer them as best I can. This relates to my type of world, working in a prison. So this relates to managing. Now, mind you, guys, Jake Haro is now going to be in the care, custody, and control of the California Department of Corrections and what is it, CDCR, Corrections and Rehabilitation. So right now he is a state inmate. He's been sentenced. So they're going to try to move him forward, put him through the classification system at one of the centralized reception areas of Southern California state prisons, and then send him to one of the higher level maximum security. So he's got a lot happening to him right now, as should be. But granted, now since he's been kind of provided to the state, our number one priority is his well-being. I mean, he has to make a serious adjustment. You know, before, actually, this will relate right to the first question. How does the shock of transitioning from county jail to CDCR differ emotionally and psychologically for someone like Jake Haro, a man coming from the streets, versus someone who's already served time before? So usually a lot of people, before they get sentenced, there's this hope that they're going to get above the system, that they are going to get what they want. And I think this happened between his public defender and the prosecutor, where the public defender was like, hey, just tell him everything. The best thing is just to throw yourself to the mercy of the judge. And then hopefully he will give you the lesser term of what they thought would be 15 years to life. And this way you're up for parole within 15 years. But he didn't get that. He got the 25 to life, plus on top of that, another 7 years and change for the probation violation and other charges. So that means that he can't be up for parole until he's around 64, because he's 32 now. And that's if he even gets it his first time. He's got a history of repeat offenses. Look what he did to his first daughter back in 2018. Promise faith. So it probably wouldn't be in parole's best interest to release him the first time that he's out. And the judge pretty much, which he could always probably appeal, but the judge pretty much said if there's any changes that happen in the future, it will not affect you. But that may be open to an appeal later on. But I think the mindset you have to be wary of. Remember, our job in corrections is to ensure that the full sentence is carried out. So part of corrections is, yes, custody and control 100%, but underneath that is care, because they're sent to us for care, custody, and control. So what I would tend to do once he got received in the reception area of one of the facilities down in Southern California, they may even fast track him because he's such a popular case. But with that said, he should technically go through that reception area, because you're going to want to have him evaluated by mental health. I mean, it looks like that he's definitely devastated by what happened. Again, not for the right reasons. He's not devastated because he feels guilt. He's devastated because you got responsibility now you have to deal with. You are fully accountable. So your strategic maneuver did not work, if that was the case. If that's what you were solely doing, hoping that you can come up front and be honest, hoping for that lesser sentence, it didn't. Backfired. And it backfired yesterday. So now he has to deal with the outcome of that choice. So for me, if I was managing him, I would probably want to put him on some type of close watch, just keep my eyes on him. You know, even if he said that he was mentally okay, that he's not going to do anything foolish, I would still try to have my eyes on him for a little bit, maybe just have mental health work with him a little bit, because he has to make that huge adjustment. He went from freedom to now 32 years, technically, with a later sentence of 25 years to life. So this could be his life. This could be the ultimate outcome of what he did, a life sentence. So again, we all felt that there was justice yesterday, but it's not full justice. We still got to see what happens to Rebecca. We still got to find out where Emmanuel is, but we're one step closer. This judge gave him the maximum sentence. So again, to answer that first question, how does the shock of transition from county jail to CDCR differ emotionally and psychologically for someone like Jake Haro? Hope is gone. You've been sentenced. So now it's all about accountability. Yeah, you could put some hope in your appeal process, but that's not as much hope as you would during the initial process. So again, you have someone that probably thought he had a plan, thought it was going to work, and now it's not. So now we have to make sure we go ahead and manage him during this emotional time for him. Now, I know a lot of people are like, well, who cares? Well, we have to ensure he carries out justice, that he doesn't take the cheap way out, doesn't try to kill himself. So we have to manage this moment because he could be extremely impulsive. And the funny thing is, if something does happen to him, it's going to be hard for people to say they didn't know, because this has been publicly broadcast. You see how he was. Again, he wasn't crying because he probably had guilt. He was crying because the real world just hit him right in the face. So there is some emotion there. So you wouldn't be able to say you didn't know. So at this point here, you really got to cross your T's, dot your I's. And then even if he says he's not going to hurt himself, you would still put safeguards in play. Number two, how do classification officers balance punishment, safety, and fairness when placing someone like Haro, a convicted child killer, into a system where his very existence puts him at risk? I don't know if punishment is part of classification's scale or how they objectively score somebody. Punishment really is not what we do. We always have to make sure we deter. But and some people think, well, it's punishment. No, it's deterrence. And there is some level of punitive, don't get me wrong, but it's not the foundation of how we classify people. Because at the end of the day, even for the people that are most disruptive, we still have to worry about them individually, because we're still responsible for those individuals. We're responsible for those behaviors. So even in our effort to seek accountability from them, we are still responsible for, not what they could just do to others, but also what they can do to themselves. So obviously this is a public case. A lot of people are aware of what he did to Emmanuel. And it's kind of, you had a hierarchy in prison. I mean, the last two are child rapists, and right below that are child killers. So he's on the lower scale of that hierarchy. So you would have to assume that he could be a target. His case is still active. I mean, Rebecca is going to bring it back into the forefront when she gets seen in January of 2026. So you really have to try to do what you can for his safety. Now, he's probably going to be put in a maximum security facility because of the amount of time he has to do, that 25 to life plus the consecutive terms that he has to do before that, which is another, I think 7 years, 2 months. That's my figure. So again, that brings you to about 32 years and change. So he probably will be at a maximum security facility. But again, that's after he goes through the reception. But I would definitely consider PC for him. It depends on how controlled that maximum security facility may be. But I would look for some PC at first. Let this die down, because right now this case is too out there. It's too public. So, we in the prison management, we know which crimes tend to make you a target. So by knowing what they've done, sometimes we have to make the decision, even if it's against the better wishes, even if it's against the wishes of the, I don't want to say better, but even if it's against the wishes of the inmate. Even if Jake Haro said, I don't need protective custody. Yeah, but you could always get put in involuntary protective custody. And there's layers of protective custody. There's protective custody where there's non-congregate, where the person is strictly by themselves because the threat is just too real. But then you also have a lesser level, which would be a congregate one, where it's still PC, but there are some interactions with other protective custody inmates. That's what PC is for. But right off the bat, because of what he did, because it's such a high-profile crime, because of how other inmates may see that crime, I would definitely put him in a very controlled environment. I would definitely do whatever I can to limit his interaction with other inmates, because you can't deny knowing what he's done. So that alone makes him a target for those that would look to make a name for themselves, those who don't like those types of crimes. He's easy prey. He's easy prey. So I would definitely say that's going to be in consideration when they do their classification. And then while they're in PC, they should be awarded the same opportunities as other general population inmates, because the protective custody unit should not be considered a punitive unit. It should be defined by safety and security. And I believe CDCR has ways to manage protective custody inmates. So I would see that as a route for him first. From a correctional leadership standpoint, is isolating someone like Haro truly protective, or does long-term segregation become another form of punishment? Okay, so these are good questions. Just the verbiage gets to me sometimes, but I get what you mean. So safety and security is always paramount. So in the process, we will try to mitigate concerns that would totally isolate them. So again, eventually you'll start with some type of non-congregate setting, because I believe that would definitely be needed. But then eventually, maybe if the case dies down a little bit and you feel that the threat lessens, and you also talk to him and see how he feels, you could start opening the door for a congregate setting. But you really got to remember, he got charged with a serious crime, the killing of a 7-month-old baby. Prior to that, the beating up of a 10-week-old baby. I believe that's how old she was when he beat her, and she's permanently disabled. So, that crime stays with you. That's your label. So you got to be very careful in what you want to do long-term for him. But that's always what you think, guys, by the way, as prison management. You do something in the moment, but it's always going to lead towards the long-term. So, you're always thinking like, okay, so how do we want to manage this guy throughout his time here? Now, he has such a high-profile case that, even when we get done with it, it's still going to come up again. Anniversaries, people are just going to want to follow up. Maybe one day on Emmanuel's birthday, they'll say he'll be this old at this point, and this is the updates. So there's always going to be an interest in him. And that becomes a concern when managing their safety and security, because you could just put him in the general population and all of a sudden something pops up and he's the center of it. And then people that didn't know now know. So the news kind of doesn't ask permission to put these stories up there. So you have to always be wary that, hey, at any moment you can have a lifetime special about this guy. And all of a sudden everybody's watching it. And now this guy's no longer, what he did is no longer a secret anymore, because you could look at, oh, you know what? Time's passed. His case isn't as relevant. Let's try to start introducing him to a general population. All of a sudden, Lifetime comes out. 10 years. Emmanuel Haro's been gone 10 years. And now it's out there again. So you really can't control the media. So I think long term, because of the popularity of his case and how much interest it got, you have to assume, even though the interest may fade out a little bit, it could always be reignited at any point. And then, it could be a concern depending where he's at inside the facility. So I wouldn't look at isolating them as punishment, because I also think in the process, when you have inmates that are truly by themselves, the prison management will make sure that we do have those interactions. Those are the units that usually visited daily by mental health. They usually keep track of the person's well-being while they're there. And be honest with you, most of the time people rather be by themselves. Sometimes you have inmates that are more concerned about their safety in the population, that they start to decompensate. So sometimes when they're by themselves and they feel safe, they may be easier to manage, but they also have less pressure. So again, it can go either way. If you got an inmate that wants that interaction, and is not afraid, then of course you may want to try to see what you can do. But if you got an inmate that would just be scared to go into GP, and then you're putting him in a GP, well, he's going to feel the pressure of that stress, and that also can cause decompensation. So again, all that takes into account. None of these are easy decisions. They're not easy decisions, but they're decisions that have to be made. So I would say this could be more of a long-term setting for him, but you would have to manage some level of interactions along the way, which could always be a controlled, congregate, protective custody setting. But again, we have to get to that point. So how do long-term inmates like Haro cope when every day is the same, yet they know decades of it remain ahead? What keeps someone like this from mentally collapsing? That's a good question, because I know a lot of people here may not care, but we have to care in corrections. And the one thing we don't want to do in corrections, that is something that's extremely difficult, is we can't manage hopeless people. Managing hopeless people can be extremely dangerous. So we always have to have some level of hope instilled in how we manage them. That means that, believe it or not, when they're behind the wall, we have professionals that will still try to find some purpose for these individuals. So they don't feel hopeless. They don't feel lost. And I know people are thinking, well, what kind of purpose could he serve? Look what he's done. Right. But if I have to manage him and I have to make sure that this person stays alive so they can finish their sentence, there are going to be people that are professionals that are going to try to find something in him that they can push, that can give him some level of meaning, enough for him to carry through his sentence without taking the easy way out. Because at the end of the day, I would like to think that we all would want him to go through this 32 years and possible life sentence. I think a lot of us would think that if he took his own life, that would be the easy way out. So we don't want that. So I mean, obviously he is going to have some structure, and that kind of is a defined routine. So, you will introduce things to him like programming, stuff like that. I mean, all because someone is locked away for life doesn't mean that we don't program them. Of course we do, because we have to prepare for the fact that any day he could get let out. He could win an appeal. He could have a lenient parole board. So it's something that you still work on. So you try to manage hope, but in a realistic way. And it's balanced, right? It's like, okay, even if you don't get out, we still got to try to make you a better person. And maybe that's an impossible task. It could be. But the point is, the professional staff is still going to keep trying, because that is their job. They have to manage the person who committed the crime. Where the public, they see the crime, the people that manage him in the prison have to manage the person who did the crime. And it's not one and the same, believe it or not. It's not one and the same. Do I think Jake is an evil man? Yes. Why? Because he committed to evil actions. Do I think Jake can change? I don't know. I don't know. Because this is his second go around. Do I think that he can go into a system and then there could be professionals that could introduce him to a different mindset and then make him wake up to what he did wrong? Maybe he acted impulsively and maybe there is guilt. We don't know. But that's what the professionals will be there and find out. He could be purely evil, or it could be a person that just cannot control his actions. And again, guys, this isn't a way to minimize what he's done. He needs to be where he's at. But when you go to address an effort to help him, because that's what we have to do in the prison system, you're going to have to look at those two different things. Is this guy purely evil, or does he have concerns with how he controls his anger? Could he just be impulsive? And unfortunately, this is the end result. Because, I mean, and it's funny because sometimes you get people that look at the prison system and they pass judgment without truly knowing the complications of what we're trying to manage. Some people will see one person and, oh, that person deserves forgiveness and that person's garbage. We can't look at it that way. We have to treat people as they come to us. We have to be objective in our process. If they're respectful, we're respectful. If they're not, then it just makes matters worse. But in the end, we try not to judge on what they've done, because there's more reasons not to provide them with anything. But that's not what the system is about anymore. And that doesn't mean that when we make an effort to change somebody, we agree with what they've done. It's just, it's our job to do it. That's what makes this job extremely difficult. So we have to step up and we have to play the role because that's what we're trusted to do. That's what we're expected to do. And a lot of correctional officers, they have kids. A lot of prison management, they have kids. So there's a father in them that wants to hang this guy. But the father doesn't override their position, and that's why they are in that position. Or the mother, I apologize, parents. And as for the same day, I mean, you just got to keep them productive. You know, that's the thing. You got to try to keep their day as busy as possible, as long as they're willing to be productive. So, and right now, to be honest with you, he'll be working on his appeal. I'm sure he's going to be trying to appeal this. I don't think he's going to settle for this because he expected a lesser sentence. So I'm sure he'll put an appeal. Let's see where that goes. And it'll be appeal on leniency and on giving up the information and except for where Emmanuel was, but stepping up and saying, I did it, and asking for leniency, and leniency wasn't given. And so I'm sure he'll be busy also working on his appeal, but I do notice hope lessens. You know, once you get sentenced, there's lesser hope. I mean, there'll be a little bit in the appeal, but eventually when the final appeal goes, then you have to be on top of him again. So it's a process that you have to kind of be connected with. So as officers, how do you maintain professionalism when supervising offenders whose crimes provoke deep personal disgust, especially crimes against children? Kind of touched on this, but it's not easy. You got to separate your emotions from what you're expected to do, what you're trusted to do. And if you can't do it, it's okay. Not many people can. Then you got to step out of the role. There's no option here. This isn't like the corrections where you're supposed to beat up people and all this other shit. It's not about that. It's about maintaining fairness. And it's tough because you're dealing with people that they've done some horrendous things. You know, there's a difference. I always tell staff, you know, sometimes when they first come in, they really want to know what someone's done. And I get it. But then there's a difference between knowing what they've done and how they've done it. And when you start digging in too deep and you start seeing the monster and you can't close your eyes from that, that's a problem. Sometimes people let curiosity get the best of them and they dig too deep until they can't come back. It's like when I first came in, I wanted to know what people done. And then as the prison administration, I also get to see how they've done it. And it's a world that most people, they don't need to see. They don't. Sometimes you can get the what, but if you're asking, like if I have staff that's asking because they just want to be curious, I tell them be careful when you open that door because you can't unsee it. So you have to be ready for it. But if you're doing it because you need it, because it relates to your job, whatever, okay, that's different. But in the end, you gotta stay within your role. And if you can't, if you want to take that position of authority and start abusing those that are in your custody, control, and care, this isn't a job for you. And again, that's what makes this job hard. The things that you have to balance, you know, and sometimes these inmates don't make it easy. They'll challenge you. And we have to remain professional, and we want to throw stuff in their face. Like, who the hell are you to talk to me, you baby killer? But you can't do it. That's what they want you to do. Because once you start doing that, then they start talking to their lawyers and they say that you're treating them unfairly because you're biased against their crime. I'm not treating you unfairly. You're acting like an asshole, regardless of what your crime is. But once you start saying shit to them that they can push as being biased, opens up a lawsuit. So again, the department itself is not going to want people that can't separate emotion from what their position demands. And especially as you start to move up in prison management. I know sometimes people will think, well, I can't believe you're doing all this. He's an inmate. Look what he's done. But I'm in a position where I have to do this because I'm trusted to carry out things fairly, you know, as much as being firm and consistent, fairly. So I have to. And if I can't do it, then I can't be in this position. So let's see. What role Should rehabilitation play in the life of an inmate like Haro, someone convicted of murdering his own child? Should the system focus on rehabilitation, containment, or both? It's always going to be a balance. In the end, our job is to rehabilitate as best we can the people that enter the walls, because you never know where their future is going to be. You never know if they do win an appeal. You never know if one day parole is going to let them out. So you have to balance as best you can rehabilitation with your efforts to provide safety and security, not just for the inmate that we're talking, not just for Haro, but also for the public at large. So there's a balance here. But I will say this. It's not our job to save people. That's on them. Only they can save themselves. Our job is to give them the opportunity to see things a bit differently. Success, to be honest with you, I think is twofold. It's one, obviously, for someone that wants to be rehabilitated, to connect with them and help them, or recognizing when you can't. And we don't know enough about Jake Haro yet to understand if he's someone that can be rehabilitated or he can't. I mean, could you have someone that is truly vulnerable to the pressure of his own emotions? And guys, I'm not minimizing, just bear with me. This will be discovered later on. Because again, he went ahead and he attacked 2 kids, killing one, disabling the other. So he truly could be, as we see him, a monster because of what he's done. But when you have people that look to rehabilitate, they look at the environment, they look at the pressures that may cause somebody to act impulsively. See, the thing here about Jake that bothers me the most is that they lied about it. They try to cover it up. So there is no level of ownership. There's no level of accountability. And it only came when he was looking to get a lenient sentence. And the people that will be looking into this case, they'll see that. The people that are going to try to rehabilitate him, they'll see it's like, well, you didn't really take full ownership. You only take ownership when you feel it's better for you, when you could barter something. So, yeah, you may have stepped up and admitted all these things. And maybe it could have been an effort to save Rebecca, but I don't think so anymore. I used to think that, but I'm thinking he expected to get a lesser sentence because the lawyers were like, probably, hey, listen, you're done. You got a background of this. You know, you don't want this going to a jury. Your best spot is to plead with that judge in the sentencing. And the judge hammered him. The judge hammered him. So with that said, I think that you make an effort to try to address the individual. You take into context the individual, how they handle pressures. But at the end of the day, there is a balance, because our staff will always try our best to rehabilitate, even for those that may not want it, even for those that may not want to receive it, because that's their job. And they still have to stay motivated. That's the hard part, because they're going to be trying to rehabilitate people that just don't want it. And they have to continue to stay motivated for the people that do. You know, I mean, I know watch those movies where you have those teachers in those dangerous school environments, like Dangerous Minds. We'll try doing this in a prison setting where it's 10 times worse. You know, it's hard not to get disenfranchised because most people judge you by the outcome, but in the end, it's really the effort. You know, you shouldn't really be judged by the outcome because you can't control the outcome. You can only control your effort. So are you making it available? Yes. Is he receiving it? I don't know, but I still try. So again, we still have to know a little bit more about Jake Haro, you know, why he does what he does or did what he did. And I'd be curious on that. But I believe, to be honest with you, he only takes accountability when he feels it's beneficial to him. And that to me is not a great way to start change. You know, integrity doesn't come after the fact. Not after you've been discovered, and not when you're trying to look for leniency. It now becomes my ownership to the concern now becomes something I think I can barter with. Should states continue investing heavily in long-term lifers like Haro, or redirect those funds towards prevention and early intervention? No, sometimes, as I said, safety and security is paramount. You can't have this person out. Look what he did already. And he shouldn't have been given a lenient sentence back then. So I think this is money that should be well invested. But you can also balance both, because I do believe when you know that there's a concern, but the person still poses a risk, sometimes you could prevent or intervene within that controlled setting. Like, I don't believe this is an either or question. Like when someone gets locked up, they're not forgotten about. You're going to still try to rehabilitate. You're still going to try to prevent them from hurting somebody else or intervene if it's too late. But that could be done in a controlled setting. I don't know why people have to think that you can only, it's either prevention and intervention on the outside and total control on the inside. No, it's in the prison. It's a balance of both. It's introducing a safe environment so we can stay focused on prevention and intervention. That's not a risk that you want to take in the outside world, because if you fail or you notice it's not working, they're going to hurt somebody else, like with Jake Haro. No, it's like, you know what? You're going to be sentenced to this amount of time, and during that time, you're going to do all these programmings. That's, but let's control the environment. At the end of the day, I got to do what's safe for the public, what's safe for future potential victims. That should always come first. Do I think this person can go through program outside, or do I think they pose too great of a risk that we're going to have to do it in a controlled setting? So I think when they make those decisions, they shouldn't make those decisions in isolated fashion, like it's punishment or rehabilitation, but rather, how do we hold accountability and still protect the public? And then in the process, start rehabilitation. Well, for someone like this, it's got to be done behind the wall, because we can't risk them doing that again. So let's start this effort in a more controlled environment. So I don't think it's either or. I think it's a combination of everything. And that's why prisons and jails have to have these resources so they can balance both. That's why I don't think prisons and jails are strictly punitive anymore. I would like to say they're more about accountability. I think that's key. You got to have some level of deterrence, because there are going to be people that don't receive rehabilitation too well. So what's the only other method you have? Is introducing them to a world that they don't want to come back to, hopefully. So, you got to have both. You got to have rehabilitation, accountability, all three, and then some level of deterrence that comes with accountability. Can someone who commits an act this horrific ever contribute positively inside a prison? And if so, should that contribution matter to society? That's a great question. And I'm going to answer this in a way that most of you guys are not going to like. And I'm not doing this to be controversial. I'm doing this because I've seen it. So, let's say that, and again, guys, this is not to provide excuses. Let's just be open-ended, because this is the world I work in. This is the world I'm familiar with. So let's say when people start working with Jake Haro, they discover that most of his concerns are just anger that he cannot control impulsively. I think there's a little bit more behind Jake, but let's just simplify it, right? He can't control his anger, so he acts compulsively, and then he details the story of what he did to promise Faith. Maybe she just couldn't stop crying. He can't deal with the noise and he snaps. Or same thing with Emmanuel. He's 7 months old. He snaps again. Again, not giving an excuse. Just bear with me. And now he's dealing with a life sentence. He could be someone that you could introduce to other people who have anger management issues, who see that, who we believe need help, and need to relate to a story of where that not controlling the anger got that person. Now, granted, before you put them in front of people that need to hear that story, and this is more of a preventive or intervention, you got to make sure that the person truly takes onus for what they've done. Because I don't want someone giving me some surface level bullshit. I want someone to feel that responsibility. I want someone to feel that accountability, because I need that emotion to translate to the people who you want to try to get ahead of their anger, or you got to stop them because they're going too far. A lot of them could be repeat DV offenders. So you want, it's always good to put someone in front of them who has done something like this and now is dealing with the consequences. But with that said, it goes beyond just surface. I need to know, do you really feel the error of your ways? Have you been crying at night, not because you're trapped in the prison or jail because of what you've done, but rather you hurt 2 individuals, killed one and disabled another? You know, do you feel some level of remorse towards that? Because there is no guilt without remorse, no true guilt without remorse. You got to have remorse. And the professionals behind the wall, they can see remorse because it's something that it goes beyond just the surface. It's felt. You connect to it. You know, when they first went on air and gave their lies to the police, we knew it was BS because there was no emotion. And people that are very empathetic or highly empathetic, they don't feel it. They don't connect. So therefore, you know, something's wrong here. Something doesn't feel right. And then later on, you find out it was a bunch of BS. Well, that wasn't a shocker to some people that are highly empathetic because they're watching it and they're just not moved. So again, I think his story could play out because of the consequences, and I think it could be very beneficial. And believe it or not, the story of Emmanuel will travel through that legacy of Jake Haro's. It's a way that technically, and this, not a lot of people are going to like this, but it's a way that the death could be honored so we prevent this from happening again. So it would be great to, you know, if Jake Haro was truly able for true change, if he has it in him, to then go ahead and put him in front of other people who are on that path or who could go on that path. But the change would have to be real. It can't be surface because you got to translate that emotion. So I don't know. I don't know. It really depends on Jake. Will Jake ever feel remorse? My personal opinion, because I'll give it, probably not. And I'm making that judgment because of what he did right after it happened. The bogus story. And now I feel that this really was strategic in his sentencing. I think his crying wasn't really so much about what he's done, but the fact that he's got to face the consequences. So I'm just giving you this objectively. You know, his story could have purpose if there's remorse connected to guilt or guilt connected to remorse, because remorse has to come first. But I don't know if that's possible. And if I have someone that's only surface, I don't need them to be talking to individuals who are trying to change their lives, because change comes from emotion, not just the consequences. True change. So if I got someone up there that's talking to these people and all they focus on the consequences, now this is where my life is, that doesn't hold weight, because sometimes what happens here is truly bad people, when maybe all they're concerned about is the consequences, they don't really have any empathy, they don't really care about others, then I try to build ownership of you. I try to control you so the consequences or the chances of me getting caught get minimized. So it holds no weight. So if I had Jake up there and all he's talking about, all that comes out is consequences of a life that's now 32 years to life in prison, that's not enough to motivate people, because if I can get control of someone and I can minimize those consequences, then I'll continue hurting others. But rather, if I can truly talk from my heart and tell you what I have done and how that has hurt others, and it's not about me. I'm not the center of this narrative. I am not the victim. That's a lot to admit. And that's something that doesn't happen overnight. That's something that haunts you in your dreams until finally you can't avoid it and it gets to you. And that's where mental health has to come in. They have to talk to you, because now you have to live with that decision that you made with no excuse, no justification. And a lot of people don't want to go down that rabbit hole because they're afraid of what's going to happen to them when they come out, which will be the forever regret of what you've done. That stays with you permanently. And that has to get translated to the people that need to make that effort to change. And that's something professionals can see in people. I could see if your change is real, and I could see if it's BS. So you're not going in front of anybody if you're just focusing on bullshit consequences. I want to know how you feel about what you have done. And I don't know if I could see that with him. to be honest with you. So how do correctional leaders support officers who must protect the very people society hates the most? Training. I think that's a big thing. Trying to provide services for mental health, things that provide balance. Because at the end of the day, when you work in corrections, you have a very different perspective of how you see the world. Because, you know, a good portion of your day is around the worst of the worst. You know, I always use this scenario, but Santa Claus in the mall is just a Santa Claus to a kid, but for us, it's a pedophile. So you got to give them, you got to work with your staff so they have balance, because in the end, we want them to be vigilant, but not to the point where they're paranoid. So, you got to talk to them, kind of deal with them on an everyday basis and just make sure everything is flowing in the right direction and provide those resources. I think correctional officers or correctional staff in general, including the civilians, they should be seen by a mental health specialist every couple of years just to make sure that if there are any concerns, we address them before they settle in and they get ignored and then just become part of who that person is. Because sometimes in corrections, the change is so slow and subtle, you don't even know you're changing until you have. Then it's too late. Should parole, there's two more questions here. Should parole boards ever hear these cases, or should life truly mean life for crime against children? I would like to see if there were certain crimes against children, the most vulnerable. I don't know how other people may view this, but I would like to see the highest level of accountability. Some people would say punishment, but I'd say accountability. But with that said, the way the world is shifting, a lot of people are trying to look more at what caused the person to do what they've done. So now that's coming into the forefront more now than it ever did before, especially when it comes to parole. Parole should be very interested in why someone does what they've done, where maybe on the prosecutor side, it's just, I got to get them there, prove it was them, just the facts, where the intent, it matters, but it's at the end of the day, if I don't have enough to prove the intent, then all I got are the facts here, and they're more focused on the facts. I think when later on, when the person goes up for parole, those whys matter, intent, all that stuff matters, because that's where the center of accountability is. Most times people will try to defer responsibility with their intent. I didn't want to do this. I just wanted to shut him up. And unfortunately, it got the best of me. And then you get people that will come out and literally say, he couldn't stop crying and he pissed me off and I beat him and I beat him again. And there's just a level of accountability that I think parole, they look for. So as much as I would want to say that crimes against children should be life, because I do believe there are people that truly cannot change, especially our sex offenders. I don't think, I think we have people that work with them that try to minimize their impulse, their compulsion, but they'll even be the same ones to tell you. I've had psychologists or psychiatrists on my show that deal with specifically with sex offenders, and they say all they could do is try to minimize their compulsion, but you wouldn't trust them with your children. I believe for the safety of all, you commit something like that, you're gone for life. There's just nothing you can do to rehabilitate that person to the point where they could be trusted. But for crimes of violence, especially against the most vulnerable, emotionally, yes, I would love to see that carried out. That there really is nothing that they can provide to society. But I don't know if that's my emotions talking. And I have to be fair because I'm still in the business. I would have to know more about the individual, what caused it, trust in my own experience to know if the person's selling me a bridge or not, and then make a decision based on the evidence and based on what people are telling me about the individual. So I think I expect a lot from parole. I do. I don't expect them to just do cookie cutter shit, because they're the ones that really have to know a little bit more about that individual. It's not about filling a quota, but rather who are you really releasing out on the streets? You know, do you know enough about what they did prior, and more importantly, why they did it? What are they telling you? And let's compare that why with the how. Let's compare that why with what they did afterwards. And then also let's see what they've done in the prison to showcase that they're on the right track. Let's talk to the people that are working with them directly. I mean, do we have someone that is changing, or just someone that's so good at wearing that mask? Because that's one thing in corrections. The mask comes off once in a while, so we get to know who these people really are. So parole should be talking to the officer, should be talking to anybody that has an interaction with that individual. So sex offenses to me are just predators. Someone that kills a child, yes, emotionally, I see them as predator as well, because they're the most vulnerable. But with that said, I would like to think emotionally that they should go away for life, but that's not how the system's working anymore. So if there's a shift to the system, me being part of the system, I have to try to recognize that shift and then see where that shift may need some slight adjustments. So I would really need for people in those positions to really look at the why. Why was this done? And is the person, can the person be rehabilitated? And that's not an easy answer. And to be honest with you, that goes way beyond just what the parole board is able to answer on their own. They have to ask around, and they have to make a decision based on collective information. So again, that's my thoughts on that. It's an honest thought, because if I come around and I said that that they should stay away for life, even though emotionally I may agree with that, I have people that are committed to working with people that have anger management issues, because that's what this could be. We don't know. But hypothetically, look at things from every angle. I try to be as objective as possible. So if I say, no, screw it, put them in for life, I mean, what's the difference of that same person with anger management issues killing a woman, killing their spouse, killing their mother, killing their grandmother? I mean, as they get older, do we look at the crime in a less extreme manner, when at the end of the day, they're still vulnerable, but they're adults, and that's a kid? Doesn't matter. The underlying issue could be something with anger that they cannot control. So you have to look at that from all angles. And then we have people in play that are supposed to be able to work with those individuals. So if I say that anybody with anger management issues that has the potential to kill somebody that's more vulnerable than they are should be locked away for life, then why do I have people in a position to try to work and change that? And I have seen people with anger problems change. I have. I've seen it. I'm not saying he can, but I've seen it. So I don't want to do a universal answer and say yes because it happened to a kid, so he deserves to get locked away for life. But if it happened to a wife, he doesn't. Or if it happened to his grandmother, he killed his grandmother, he doesn't. It doesn't work that way. As much as we know the victim is vulnerable, you have to look at the bigger picture. What caused it? You know, what caused him to do this? But in this case here, because of what he did emotionally, I wouldn't be against him going away for life, because it's his second time. He has that as well on him. It's his second time. He was given a chance and he messed it up. So on that alone, I would push for him to just kind of stay where he's at. That's my opinion with him. He was already given his chance, and he killed somebody after that. And what can we learn from Haro's trajectory to identify early red flags before tragedy turns into lifelong incarceration? And I like how this person looked at this question, because they look at it from Haro's perspective. It's interesting. What can we learn from Haro's trajectory to identify early red flags before tragedy turns into lifelong incarceration? The way that question's worded is very interesting. It's not worded from preventing him from hurting others, but rather a sentence for him. That's an interesting perspective. So what can we learn from Haro's trajectory to identify early red flags before tragedy turns into lifelong incarceration? I would say he should have been held fully accountable the first time. So you have accountability mixed in with efforts to rehabilitate. Because some people you may not be able to rehabilitate, but you can deter through some level of accountability and consequences to those actions. So there's always a balance of both. But I think Haro's case, what makes his case more unique is the leniency that he was given the first time. And it was such an extreme act that, to me, that wasn't about rehabilitation, but rather justice for Promise Faith, Carolina. And I think they looked at it the wrong way the first time around. I think they looked at it being lenient for his effort to be rehabilitated as opposed to justice for Carolina, Faith Promise, and then ultimately accountability for what he's done. So I think you have to find a way to blend accountability, because that's the justice side, with rehabilitation. But in this case here, the red flag, we don't know what his history was before the incident with Carolina Promise Faith. I mean, he didn't really have a red flag from our mind. He just went ahead and beat the hell out of a 10-week little girl. So he may not have had a red flag. So I think the problem was the accountability that should have been given to him the first time around. That wasn't. So the reason why he's going to be incarcerated for life is because he didn't learn the first time, but that's not on anybody else but him. Because at that point, he should have noticed that he needed help, and he should have been forced to get help. He should have reported himself the moment he did it and stopped coming up with some bullshit and then seek help. Even if that counts from going to jail and getting the help there, because obviously you need it. And then the pattern repeated itself again with Emmanuel. Does it again, creates some bullshit story, forces his, could have forced his wife to start the story. We don't know what that is yet. And then again, no accountability. So I think for someone like that, as I mentioned, there's still no level of ownership because it's a repeated pattern of just doing something foolish and covering it up, as opposed to stepping up and saying, "Hey, I hit this child. I think I went a little too far, or I did go a little too far, and I need help." And that's it. Do what you got to do with me. And we didn't see that the first time, and we didn't see it the second time. And I think that's going to play out in the long run when he's up again. You could say, "Hey, listen, you had your chance and you didn't. And there's really nothing here to say that you're going to do the right thing when you get out." So with that said, life sentence could be carried. As always, guys, if you like the content, please, I have Buy Me a Cup of Coffee. It's in the description, or you can find it on my title if you go on my YouTube channel. And as always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. Please stay safe.